All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion for to approve the agenda? Josh? Do I have a second? Paul? Do I have any additions, deletions, concerns? All right. All in favor? That would be unanimous. Public input and announcements. Do we have anything tonight? Nothing? I didn't receive anything?
None I'm aware of.
All right. We will move along from that. Approval of the minutes from April 5th, 2023, which I have right here. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
All right, it's Nick Flanders, second by Cindy. Do I have any additions, deletions, concerns on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor? It is unanimous. All right, Tinmouth update.
That's us. Okay. So, I'm Jen Galusha. I teach 3-4. This is Tabitha Davis. She teaches K1. Just a reminder. So, here's just our first slide of some kids. Oh, no, it's good. No. Well, we had an idea, but it didn't work. Oh, okay. So Tabitha
Tricked you, haha.
They wanted to make it work every time. So Tabitha and I share a doorway in between our classrooms, and we utilize this door from time to time to be like, "Hey, can you do this for me?" Or I have a quick question. So there was a particular time where she had to go to a meeting, and so I took in her classroom. So the K1s came into 3-4. And I was like, oh, this will be perfect. I'm reading a really awesome book called The Wild Robot. Totally kid-friendly. Let's read it together. The K1 students were enthralled. They loved it. So the next day they were like, can we come back into Miss Galusha's room? And so from then, I let them come in like 2 times a week to do our read-alouds. And they loved it. They were, understanding at a different level than my 3rd and 4th graders, but that was fine. So next I transitioned to a book that was not exactly appropriate for K1 students, but I really wanted to do something again with them because I loved having them in there. So I need to turn that. We came up with the Battle of the Books. So I picked 4 books, picture books, and Tabitha picked 4 picture books. And of course it was going to be at different levels. So I was explaining to my 3rd and 4th graders, yes, there's pictures, but we can get some really great information and themes and meanings from this. So Tabitha, I'll let you talk a little bit more about it.
Okay, so we picked some books with some different themes, which are all here. So some kind of had to do with death and coping with death and understanding when people leave. Some had to do with being prepared when we have lockdowns or drills, kind of understanding that. And different identities, different, what am I thinking?
Well, one was environmental, women's history, of course.
The women's history, that's right. The Black history, behind engineering space travel. So we picked some really different themes that we could really discuss with our students and that would be good for both K1 and 3-4. So we would read the books together, and then Jen and I would split off with our groups and do some different discussion questions and activities that went with that. So, and in order to kind of get to our final book, they obviously had to vote on it. So in my classroom, anyway, we would come back, we would do the discussion, and then we would do opinion pieces. So we did a couple of opinion pieces on their favorite book and why they thought that this book should be the one that we chose if we voted. So I used some rubrics that we got from Bookworms, and one is a assessment that the kids do on themselves. They do their own checklist. So did I do my opinion? Did I state my topic? Did I come with some more than one opinion? Did I close my piece? And then my rubric grading it. So the students and I met together to do their rubric, check how they thought they did on their writing piece, and then I would score them out. And this was after many edits. And then they also really enjoyed reading them to a friend. Actually, Miss Riker came in one day, and they were working on their opinion pieces, and they were like, "Can I read this to you?" So really noticing that there are people that are their audience and that they should read these pieces to.
Yeah, and in my classroom, we did some writing pieces too that delved a little bit deeper for them. And we were using also the score sheets from Bookworms to help us, so they guided them along what was the expectations. And the way to make it onto the board was exemplars. So they knew that if they did really well, most likely it was going to make onto the board. So they loved it, and the winner was Badger's parting gifts, in case you were wondering. Which, side note, that book had a lot of tears in our classroom from adults and children, but it was a really amazing learning experience for all of us. So we learned that we can, talk about hard stuff and still figure it out together. So.
And in fact, one of our exemplars went in the Timoth Tales. So it was published, so they thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool. That's us. Next up is Tasha Turan.
Tasha, I'm going to arrow down because it doesn't seem to be working.
Oh, okay. So, can I touch on this or no? I was touching the screen?
Maybe that's the
Yeah, it was flickering.
Oh, it was the book touching it.
Let's try it. Okay, so when we were at the meet and greet a while ago, the new teacher meet and greet, I was really excited and thanked you for supporting the mystery science curriculum, and I was like, it's really working great for me because when I used to do lessons, I'm going to just show you really quick. When I did lessons, it was basically like very time consuming. I take a lot of cut and paste, like here's a picture, there's a definition. So this isn't in the slideshow format, just so that you could see how awkward it is. You really have to, I don't know, just trying to get things to fit. And it was just it was very time consuming. So, this is the part that shows, right? So, can you escape out of that?
Please go back.
Okay. And, I was going to show you, like, my last slide would be like, draw, your favorite, draw an animal you learned about in its habitat, list the things that it was very simple. It's like drawing and writing. But with the mystery science curriculum, it's a lot more in-depth, more scientific. Like, we had a lot of scientific discussions, but we weren't working with data. And I just really think it's like more sophisticated. So I just wanted to show it to you really quick. It's like a canned thing, and it has lessons. And I was talking to the other teachers, maybe for K1, it's not enough curriculum, so you really supplement it with the things you already have or what you're interested in. 5, 6, they're a little maybe mature for it, or maybe it's writing intensive. There were pros and cons. It wasn't so great, but the other like 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade teachers that I normally meet with really liked it. Like, we were trying to find global studies curriculum that was similar. So, you can just choose whatever grade you are. So I focused on 3rd grade this year. And I just really wanted to show you, like, all the units are here. And in each, like, section with the standards that you have to teach, there's different lessons. So, for example, this was a favorite lesson. And it comes with a movie, like a bunch of clips. It comes with an interactive activity. This one, they pretended to look up dinosaur fossils. They had the different jaw bones and teeth, and how do you distinguish between an herbivore and a carnivore and an omnivore. And we really tied that in with our outdoor classroom. Go to the next slide. I'm trying to I was told I had a minute and a half, right? So I had 5 slides, I have 2 now. But this is the cool stuff that I wanted to share. So this is, they do like a catchy thing that a child could relate to in their world. So where's the best place to build a snow fort? Oh, we know the best place to build a snow fort, but it's not as simple as you would think. You'd be like, oh, this is simple. So they do like the temperatures in Madison, Wisconsin, Fairbanks, Alaska, and Truckee, California. They took samples from different dates on winter days, and it changes. We had to map them as in like which days were cold, moderate or too warm. And so they had to like color in the bubbles based upon the key they filled in the bottom. And then this, this was a separate one. So this was for the snow fort, and we applied this one up in our outdoor classroom building forts anyway. So, they were packing them with snow, like we were waiting for good snow. So anyway, it was nice because we did this kind of lesson, and like with the herbivores and carnivores lesson, they really used that language. They were even using it like yesterday. One of the students was writing an essay about plants. And if we didn't have plants, then we would have herbivores. And if we didn't have the herbivores, what would the carnivores eat? So it's just neat. So they're using the vocabulary. This one, we did climates of the world. And this is the climates of the Americas. So they colored in the climates and then the zones. And we talked about the different weather. And if you could go to the next slide. So they were in groups, and each group had a different part. And this is hanging up in our classroom now, and we can refer back to it. So I just really like, if you go back one slide, I'm so organized. I just really like this part. We're organizing data. We have options between Celsius and Fahrenheit. We take the temperature in the classroom every day, outside our classroom every day, and graph that. So it ties together. So we don't rely solely on this, but each one of these, if you go back, back. Sorry. Yep. It has the standards also listed for each activity. It has printouts, it has extensions, where if you want, you can read more about each topic. So this is the one I was looking at most recently. Okay. Time's up. That's how to keep me. All right. Can you get to Jen's slide?
Yeah,
Awesome.
sure can.
Okay.
Ready?
Great.
Thanks. I'm Jen Tift. I teach 5-6. I use my note card. All right, so I wanted to just fill you in on kind of a cool collaborative activity that we've been working on. I'm going to give you sort of the timeline of the last few weeks. So it started with the art teacher and music teacher, Tammy and Tom, deciding that they were going to do kind of this collaborative between graffiti and hip hop. So Maureen challenged the kids or asked them to make a message out of their graffiti. And the message that they decided on was don't get caught in the web, which had a lot of different levels of meaning for them. Somewhere along, right around that time, I got tagged into it with maybe introducing some poetry into it, specifically slam poetry. We talked about the origins of slam poetry. We talked about various poets that were writing interesting slam poems. We looked at Amanda Gorman's poem. We looked at a current poem by Ryan Boyland. He wrote an interesting poem about the NCAA final game with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and that whole controversy. He wrote a really interesting poem, and so we were able to bring that into the class and talk about that. Then we went on a field trip to Rutland with Tammy, our art teacher. She took us to Rutland, and we did a walking field trip, and we got to look at all sorts of different street art. During that field trip, I was able to get in touch with, not during that field trip, before the field trip, I was able to get in touch with Catherine Wiggers. She's one of the artists that's done a lot of the portraits in Rutland, or a lot of the art in Rutland. This specifically is one of hers. So she met up with us, walked with us for a few of her paintings, just talked to the kids about her art and about her life and how she became an artist and why she paints what she paints and how the process goes. It was really neat. Then The following week, I was able to reach out to Middletown Springs writer and poet Linda Peavy. She came and did a lesson on poetry with the kids, and then together we wrote a group poem or a board poem, which is kind of fun to see all the kids sort of adding lines to the poem, and she sort of edits as she goes. It's a really kind of a fun process to watch. Next, we brainstormed what does don't get caught in the web mean to you. So we had my whole whiteboard full of what does it mean, what could it mean. We looked at big things like war, environmental, human rights, getting caught up in those pieces. And then we kind of narrowed it down: bullying, body image, effects of drug and alcohol use and abuse. And then we looked bigger stuff. If I only did this, what if I give up my dreams? So we had all sorts of different topics. Linda came back, we wrote some poems. She took them, looked at them, gave us some feedback. She came back, we wrote some more poems. She brought back some more feedback, we wrote some more poems. So we've got a collection of each kid's probably written 3 to 5 at this point in time. We wrote a couple more together. So the last piece that we're doing is the kids are finishing their art, their graffiti art. They built a wall that they're putting their graffiti on. They're learning their hip hop dancing. We're writing the poems. Linda took all of the poems collectively and she took them back to her house. She's compiling them into one large poem that's going to be a choral read. One of my PLC goals for this year was authentic audience, and so this is a really good way to do that. So we sort of hijacked the spring concert a little bit and are turning it into more of an arts celebration where we're going to be doing some of the hip hop dancing, showcasing the art and doing the choral read. So I'm going to close with an invitation. June 1st, that's our big night. Write it down because y'all should be here. I'm not even going to share any poems because if you want to see me, you got to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time and all the update. Next would be the F28 student wellness update.
This is another one of those fun ones where we have policies that within those policies they call for an annual update. And if you're looking at this one, you'll see really 2 sections, Roman numerals 1 and 2, and then Roman numerals 3 and 4. So reviewing our policy and then just providing a little feedback on where we are with those. That 1 and 2 section at the top, that's really covering things like curriculum, things that we're doing with students, PE, health, those types of activities. The second section there, 3 and 4, that has a lot to do with food service and how we make sure that we are meeting federal USDA regulations as far as foods being available throughout the school day and foods being prepared in our cafeterias go. Jody did a lot of the review of the 1 and the 2, thinking about, do we have the curriculum in place that we should have in place based on our policy? And then Stan, working with our wonderful, wonderful food service person that all the 10 Myth people know, Jess Casey, to review the 3 and the 4. Jess does a lot of oversight of all of the food service activities happening at all of our sites. So Stan and Jess sat down and mapped out a little bit of some bullet points here that can let you know what we do to ensure that we have programs that not only meet our policy, but meet those federal guidelines. Any questions on any of those pieces? Questions for Jody, Stan, or myself?
Guess not.
My parting thought on that then, highlighted at the end of that material that was provided, my recommendation is to work this policy into the cycle for review and readoption. This is something that we do want to review every 3 years, and there are some requirements for how we review that as far as accepting input from different groups. If we review that through policy committee, we've got that baked into how we do policies. We have those opportunities. Yeah, Matt?
Do you know when the last time this was reviewed was?
About 3 years ago.
Okay.
So
So
we
it's
are,
due then.
yeah, we're right where we need to be with this, but we do need to spend a little more time. Tonight is the report of where we are and how we know we're following the policy, but we do need to do that review piece, and I do think policy is the best place to do that work, and then have a little more time to dive in deeper, if that makes sense.
So that should go on the agenda for policy then. Perfect. All right. Board education / strategic planning.
So that is a check-in. At our last meeting, we had discussed a tentative timeline for doing that work. And I included that again in the meeting materials so we could look back at it. We had tentatively talked about in May trying to do a strategic planning meeting. Our hope was, I think we were going to do personnel tonight, and we were going to do that strategic planning work on the 17th. In fact, we're looking at that personnel meeting happening on the 17th. So we should probably think about what we want to do for our June meeting. If we want to bump and still do that strategic planning, if there's a board education piece we feel is more important to do. We may need to have a broader conversation around schedule, and I guess now might be an appropriate time. I was going to bring up during other business that we do have a funky 5 Wednesday month in May. So we do have an additional Wednesday. Mill River graduation is traditionally on a Wednesday. And looking at those Wednesdays coming up for Mill River and how we can make sure that we're not, so that timing is appropriate for our seniors. And we're not having graduation incredibly early, we're not having graduation incredibly late. It looks like June 7 is a great graduation date. We have a board meeting on the 7th. We could shift our board meeting to May 31st, the week prior, because we have that odd 5th Wednesday.
Yeah, I'd prefer that because I have a kid graduating this year,
Okay.
so.
So 2 weeks from now, we could have another May meeting. And that means we could do strategic planning still in May, and we could still have some June meetings to get a little bit back on this schedule, if that makes sense.
That's fine with me.
We can talk a little bit more about some further implications of that during agenda building.
Okay.
Do folks have a strong sense of, so say we decide on a May 31st meeting, do folks have a strong sense of strategic planning or board education? Which of those makes the most sense? I have my opinion, but I'm absolutely
I think the
interested in
strategic plan,
yours.
I think we should, since we bumped it.
Strategic planning,
today,
definitely.
that we should just move that to then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that keeps us on schedule.
Okay. That's work that we're doing with our leadership team too, and I think keeping that timing lined up, I like that. My vote would have been for that.
Yeah, that's my vote as well.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if folks want to discuss further down this schedule, or if we want to take this as part of our agenda building. Maybe we just build into, when we agenda build, we talk about what's the next round going to be. Do folks have a sense of, let's play it by
We're
ear?
missing 3 or 4
or-
people, so I think we should wait
Okay.
and
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah,
Absolutely fine with me.
I think it's fine. I think that's a good idea. And I think having the bullet, like, this is what we suggested.
Yep.
And then we talk, and we just say, does it still make sense
And
to
you
do
can
that?
always keep checking in. Great. So we know what we're doing on the 31st, and we will check in then. Well, we can check in 17th, we can check in 31st. We'll continue to check back on this and see where we want to go next. Fantastic, thank you.
Wallingford principal vacancy update.
Okay, that is me again. You're going to get sick of hearing from me. I provided for you a timeline of how we approached this hiring process. This was similar, if not almost identical, to the process we followed for hiring a Clarendon principal, for hiring our Shrewsbury principal, for hiring our Mill River principal. I think the only difference is our Mill River principal, we engaged more stakeholders, so we really had two groups. We had the caregiver group as a separate group, where with our elementary schools, that was one committee. So early April, we first became aware that there was going to be a vacancy, and we got moving on posting it, knowing that if we missed the April-May window, we would miss a lot of the folks whose contracts were up and they were looking. We played that game a couple of times last year, and we saw how quickly we missed out on candidates. So we posted it as quickly as we could. Len and I reviewed applicants, and out of about 8 or so applications, we selected 4 folks who looked like they would be worth exploring to find the best fit for a Wallingford principal. We were looking, I think, if I had to pick one thing that set those 4 candidates apart, experience would maybe be one, strength of reference would maybe be the other. So that's how Len and I sat down and made that decision on whether we were going to call those 4 people in or not. Of those 4 individuals, one actually dropped out because they took a job fairly quickly. We interviewed 3. Coral, Stone, and myself interviewed 3 on the 21st. So those 3 were all fairly strong candidates, so we decided to send all 3 to the committee, actually. And then when we showed up the morning of the committee over the weekend, another had dropped out. So you can see the hiring climate here in Vermont. There are not a lot of principal applicants, and there are a lot of principal openings in the region. So of the 4 strongest candidates, we lost 2, which is kind of crazy. We saw that happen last year, too, with our hiring processes. I'm thrilled with the people we did hire last year, but I think it's just worth noting that that's a trend that I don't see changing. When we try to hire these positions, we have to be careful. We have to not move too quickly, but not drag our feet. The committee, which we'll talk about a little bit more when we get down to personnel committee reports, and Bruce, you're welcome to share anything you want to share if you want, but the committee had a strong unanimous recommendation that we'll bring to the board during that personnel committee report. Do you want to say anything about the committee?
Not really. I thought it was a good committee, and I thought it was excellent that they had 2 parents, 3 teachers, and then a board member. I mean, it's their principal, and I thought it was really well done. And a parent and a teacher brought questions that they thought were more pertinent to Wallingford, and we adopted some of those. So I think it went well.
Yeah, thank you. So that's all I have, unless folks have questions about that process, that timeline, or how we approach that.
Everybody else up?
Awesome.
Perfect. Moving right along, we've got the Clarendon Elementary budget transfer.
Stan, do you wanna do that one?
Well,
Didn't make you drive all the way up here for nothing.
Clarendon has had a problem with their slide and at their playground for the last couple of years. It was inspected by a visit, and they had recommended a change, and have not due to COVID have not been able to pin down getting a slide in and installing it. Things have cleaned up a lot better this year. Jane, the principal at Clarendon, has found money in her activity lines, which was earmarked for her winter sports program. Clarendon did not do the winter sports program this year. So her request to the board is to transfer up to $9,000 into the buildings and grounds department to purchase a slide for the playground. Currently, that slide that's been of question the last couple of years, I think was inactivated this year, so they have no slide to use currently. So she would like to go ahead and purchase a slide, before the end of this year, and use that winter sports program money to do it. So if the board could make a motion to approve the transfer of up to $9,000 for the purchase of a slide from the activities department to the buildings and grounds department, that would cover it.
Paul, you make the motion, Paul?
No, I had a question.
Okay. All right.
Should we get a motion on the table before discussion?
Sure.
Anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Josh, second? Second from Cindy. Question from Paul.
Just the amount of money, my mind goes back to the 1950s when, we had a slide on the playground, and to see that amount of money for what is in my memory, what's different about that makes it $9,000 these days?
It's I believe the slide itself is about $7,000, and then you got a couple of $1,000s for installation, which really should not be done by the custodial staff. It should be by professionally, trained or licensed people that install
Is there
the
like a
slides.
cement footing here?
Right.
Okay.
Do you have any idea, because this slide got replaced last year, because we had the same thing where it was a big metal slide that
Right.
got taken out, and is it in that same ballpark
That
of price?
same ballpark, a little bit more.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a similar question. Can we clarify which slide it is? Because I know there's multiples.
I
Which,
can tell you. It's the one that,
it's the big
it's the
spike.
twisted
Yeah,
one.
Corkscrew
It's
one,
it's
yeah.
a big plastic one, and it's attached to the play structure.
yeah, I know which one it is.
So, I mean, that probably has something to do with it, too. It's not just like a singular slide in the middle of the playground. It's part of a structure.
A little different than 1950.
And then the other, so the money wasn't spent for the Winters Fund. So does that normally, that just would get calculated into like the surplus deficit that we don't have, and then we would take some of that money to go back into the Buildings Fund anyway, right? Because or 250,000 of that goes
Well,
into the,
By doing it now in this current year, that it's used specifically for claim.
right. I'm saying if we didn't vote for
If we didn't
this,
do it, in theory, yes, that
That part of that
9,000
potentially
would
is going
go
to-
towards the 250,000 that would be earmarked for the building sinking fund.
Good questions. Any other questions? All right, all in favor? It's unanimous, so, you're welcome. All right, committee reports. Personnel.
So Len is not here, but if folks don't mind, I will share what we've got. And Len has been in the loop on bringing these several without going to the Personnel Committee first. If you don't mind, I'll start with the principal, since we were speaking about that not so long ago. You have two contracts actually in front of you. There is a contract for interim principal for Phil Hall, which we had spoken at our April board meeting about the board giving me the authority to put somebody in place. You do need to authorize the contract, and we do need to approve the contract. So there's that in front of you. If somebody wants to make a motion to approve the contract for Phil Hall interim principal, April 24 through June 30. Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion about that interim position?
How's he doing?
I hear very good things. I do, so far.
I was at that little session we had a
Yep.
few Fridays ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can tell you that I have not heard from any of those parents since. And I take that as a sign, because what I told them during that meeting was absolutely copy me on anything that's an issue. So we made that explicit and clear that I was absolutely comfortable with that. I have had conversations with staff members that have led me to believe that things are going well. Absolutely. And the committee did interact with some current personnel there. 3 folks who actually work there were part of that hiring committee. So, good question.
So do we have a motion on the?
Yeah, that's discussion.
So, any other questions about the interim contract? All in favor? Unanimous.
Okay, thank you. And then we have two-year contract. So this is the contract that actually, I can bring the interim principal contract to you. This is coming from the hiring committee. They were the ones that made the recommendation, and since they had a strong unanimous recommendation, there was no need for me to get involved. So I'm bringing this to you on their behalf. This contract follows the language of our other admin contracts, with the addition, Bruce had recommended last year that we put a clause in around if somebody breaks contract, if they leave contract early. So that is in here. That follows our teacher contract language, so it's the same language there.
It's been an issue the last couple of years.
Yep. Yep. So that is in here. Otherwise, the details are the same as our other principal contracts. So I would ask for a motion to approve a contract for 2 years for Phil, principal at Wallingford, starting July 1.
Make the motion.
Thank you, Cindy.
Got a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Nick. Any questions, concerns, anything?
What do we do with the role that he's exiting?
Yeah, that was a grant-funded position, that was a 1-year position. And we are looking at that grant funding still to see if there's an opportunity to try and hire for next year. We may not. So we're exploring that. Consolidated federal programs, Title I, Title II, Title IV funding. We actually, Jody and I were sitting down trying to do the application a little bit today because the application opened about a week and a half ago. We started on the application and we found.
Because I know it was well received.
Yes.
So.
Folks at Mill River miss Phil a lot because he was doing great work there too. So we're in the midst of trying to look and see if there's enough funding to sustain that again. Okay. So we're working on it. We may be able to pull that off. We may not. Yeah, good question.
Well, that being said, all in favor? Oh, please let Phil know. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, you're not here. Congratulations.
Phil, do you want to say anything?
Sure. First of all, this is the first board meeting I've ever attended since being hired to the Mill River School District. So it would only be right that the first thing I do is thank you board members for your service. I've worked with a variety of school boards, and I think I have a pretty good appreciation for the time and energy that goes into serving in this capacity. So thank you all for doing that and for allowing us all to do what we do for the students of the Mill River School District. I'm excited to continue at Wallingford. Today was my 8th day over there. I do feel like it's going pretty well. I'm re-energized by the fact that I'm going to be there permanently. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Then we've got a list of coaches from Kim Maneri.
Yes.
Are you going to do them as a group, or are you going to do them?
Whatever is the board's preference. I think normally we do them as a group.
Yeah, that's
okay
what
with
we've been doing
everybody.
them like the last year or so
Yep.
that way.
Does somebody want to put forward a motion to accept the coaching hires as listed?
Anyone like to make that motion? Motion from Josh. Do we have a second? Second from Paul. Any questions,
So
concerns?
is the, because, it's like, part of it is experience coaching, and then different numbers, but it doesn't seem necessarily to be exactly tied to years experience. So is it like years experience in the district that matters for pay? Does it
Isn't that part of the
matter
whole-
Yeah.
for, how does
Kim,
that?
Kim has a matrix, and part of it is going to be experience coaching. I could be wrong, but some of the other pieces, JV versus varsity, the level, I think, plays into it too. And I think the type of sport does as well. I can find that and I can share that with the board.
I don't want to
Good question.
I don't want to misspeak either. I also
Yeah.
think it also depends upon the coaching level as well. Like if you're the main coach, assistant
Oh, yeah.
coach, or if you're like an
Yeah.
assistant to the assistant.
I do have a question. There's no baseball head coach listed. And I believe I know who it is, so I'm just curious as to.
It could be that we've already approved that one.
Okay.
Is that Pam? Okay.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, I think we were just lucky and knew some of them
Okay.
long enough ago. Great question.
All in favor? Yes. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses and 1 abstained by Cindy. So,
Okay. And last thing is summer staff for after-school program summer. And I don't think this is something that we've typically brought to the board. And working with Teresa, our new after-school director, we've been talking about a lot of areas where we could make practices more consistent with what we do for the rest of the district. While it is a little different type of program, and we are charging fees for summer camp, so those fees are revenue that can pay for the program. So it's not necessarily taxpayer dollars. So there might be a rationale that you could say, well, do we really need to bring these people to the board for hire? Teresa and I, working with some other folks, it sounded like why would that hurt? Why wouldn't we do that consistently the way we do other things? So this is something that you've probably not seen before, but something that we wanted to bring to the board for your approval, if that makes sense. And I'd recommend maybe the same process of adopting these as a group, if that's reasonable.
yes, it is reasonable. Absolutely. Would anyone like to make a motion to, Josh?
That motion?
Second? Second from Cindy. Questions. I do have one question.
Yep.
The summer program,
Yep.
where is that run out of?
This year, I believe Clarendon.
Okay.
I believe we've done Wallingford in the past too, though. So it comes to a question of where are our facilities and what are our summer schedules.
Okay.
So if we've got a big project plan, say at Clarendon, we would maybe use Wallingford, vice versa.
Okay, so there's a few different options available.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions?
How is, so this is, like you were saying, how it's not directly funded. How is that, sorry if this is off, is like for the regular after school,
Yep.
is that also just fee, or do we pay for part of that after school as well?
And Stan can answer this way better than I can, but we have a small local fund budget that supports, but then we do still collect fees. Do you want to?
Right, the general fund supports 80% of the director's salary and benefits, and that's the only support for that program that's in the general fund. The rest is supported by parent fees and state subsidies.
I just wanted to, because I feel like I remember voting to approve people that were participating in the after-school program for hiring, so I just wanted to get clarity on that.
No, good question.
And question from Cindy?
No, I figured it out.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous.
Fantastic.
And is it full now? Do we know, or is it?
Oh, good question. I don't know if it's full, because it was close to being full.
I think it is. I mean, I registered my son like probably a month and a half ago, and they were like, we are
Very close.
just about full. So my guess would be by now they are.
Okay. Perfect. Is that it for personnel?
I did just send the coaching, how that's worked out, and that's all I got. Thank you, Matt.
All right. So moving along to policy.
Not here. And did we not,
I thought we
we should have sent
something
Jody,
for a
do you-
first read, but
except in our policy thing, it's listed as F28, so, but then we changed the number. But, because we have the comprehensive, we we passed on the comprehensive health, I don't remember the exact title of it, to the board, but we didn't get it sent out in that email, so maybe we aren't going to do that for first reading this
Yeah,
time.
it didn't make it into the packet.
Which
so-
one is that?
It is.
I was just
I
trying
can
to
read
look
you
it
the
up.
title in this.
Yeah.
So it didn't make it to the packet, but it is ready for a first reading. We'll make sure that it's there in 2 weeks.
Okay.
What's the lettering on that one, or letter number
We
designation?
did we?
We changed it.
You
So C7 is
Okay.
the proposed letter.
Okay.
It's not an existing policy, so we used an open letter.
Got it.
And I will send that right now over to Pam and Brian.
Awesome. Perfect.
Our next meeting's next week.
And are we comfortable getting the F-28 in there?
I was just going
Is
to
that
ask if
the-
we could put that into agenda building for them for review.
I think between Josh and I, we can handle that.
Perfect. On the same page here. So the next meeting is next week?
Next Tuesday.
Yeah. And it's the plan for that meeting, because I'm sure everyone really wants to know, is we're going to basically come up with a plan for the year of
These are all
the
the
policies that we're going to try to hit.
Okay.
Awesome.
Perfect. Buildings and grounds. So we are going to have a meeting next week. That's right here. May 8th at 5 o'clock. I'm planning on emailing Tim tonight to find out what needs to be addressed at that meeting, so I can get an agenda out. But our next meeting will be May 8th at 5 o'clock. At our last meeting, we discussed rolling project lists and goals, Tinmouth air quality, goals for managing the sports field improvements. And that was about it. We had to wait a half an hour to have a quorum, so.
Yeah, and I have a problem with Mondays, and that's a Monday.
Well, then, maybe we'll have one more meeting and then we'll change it to a different day for you. So,
Okay.
we'll work at that for you.
Okay, I know quorums are
Yeah,
an
well,
issue.
I'll send you an email and find out, we'll figure out a different day.
Okay.
My schedule's pretty easy. Community engagement.
That's me,
That's you, yeah.
because Sam's not here.
All we did was like a reorg.
Yeah, so we did reorg. Sam's still the chair. Our next meeting's next Tuesday.
Can I add one other detail from that?
Absolutely.
So Sam asked Pam if she could order thank you notes with the hope of sharing that work as a board and writing thank you notes to the staff. Pam ordered them. So if, and I'm not part of the committee, so I'm just remembering the dialogue. If you guys wanted to engage with those areas.
I'll take a stack.
Fantastic.
Perfect. All right, before we hop down to finance, I'm just gonna throw in under committee reports, negotiations.
Yeah. Good
We did
catch.
have a reorg meeting for negotiations. I will be serving as the chair of that committee, and we are planning to have a meeting, I believe, in June.
Yeah, the Burn tried like that.
Yeah, but for right now, we just basically touched on reorg for that committee, so. All right, finance.
Liz is not here. She had some other business this evening that she had to attend to. As Paul was kind of hinting at earlier, we didn't have a quorum for finance. So we just had a informal conversation around budget next year and some things that we were thinking about, things that were on our mind. No business, but just checking in about how budget went this year and thoughts for next year. Josh, would you add anything to that?
No, I think it's the same. I think we're trying to, like, basically the big topic that we were just talking about is just how do we maintain the community engagement that we had during the last.
How do we build on that?
And how do we go further? And like, if there's any, how do we address maybe some problems from shortfalls? But that's basically it.
And we did set a meeting. And I'm not finding it right off.
The May 25th at 4 p.m.
Thank you. Yep. So Thursday, the 25th, 4 p.m.
All right. Moving along to.
Somebody has to do the pay orders.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm
And
sorry.
I can't
I'm
do
so
this
used to,
'cause I
I'm so
can't read
used to
numbers.
Liz just going ahead and doing them. So I just read down through all this stuff here?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Payroll warrants. I've got a payroll warrant for $606,600.16. It's a regular pay order. I have another regular pay order for $6,783.51. Another regular payroll warrant for $606,881.35 for a total of $1,220,265.02. General fund, I've got a balance of $118,879.73. $1,745. Is that after-school program?
Yep.
After-school program, $1,036.38. The lunch fund of $60,825.81. General fund, $28,005.80. Student activity fund, Mill River, back up to the top. The total is $210,492.72. Student activity fund, Mill River, $6,165.61. Clarendon Elementary School, $0. Shrewsbury Mountain School, $0. Wallingford, $0. Tinmouth, $7,578.23 for a total of $13,743.84. That's it. I'd like to make a motion that we approve these.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous.
We need to authorize you to sign here again.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Motion to authorize Matt from anybody?
Oh, I'll make a motion.
Cindy?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Unanimous.
Awesome. Thank you for catching that, Paul.
It's the third, isn't it? So transact other legal business. Do we have anything?
I'll mention two quick things because we're going way ahead of schedule tonight. Two things that Jody and I have been looking at and working on as we've gone through one budget cycle together. How about that? And watching that play out and seeing some of our needs and asking a lot of our communities this year. We felt strongly that we should also be pushing ourselves to look for funding too, where possible. And we've talked a little bit at the board level around school safety. So we've found a school safety grant that we're trying to access. So that's something we've been working on. So I just want you to know that. That isn't something that has disappeared. We haven't mentioned it in a while, but that's something we're looking at. We've also been thinking a lot about mental health supports. There's a lot of conversation around academics coming out of COVID, but then there's also a lot having to do with student social emotional well-being and mental health. And I think it would have been a lot to ask our communities to pay more in taxes to try and fund a lot of personnel to support that. We found a grant that the state has offered to districts where we could try to access some of that through contracted services. So thinking about how do we try to fund a partnership with somebody like Rutland Regional Mental Health, who might have staff who are qualified and trained and have expertise that we know our people are going to try to do the best darn job they can, but sometimes we can't provide the same services that somebody like Rutland Regional Mental Health could. So we're exploring a grant that could help us contract out to bring that into our schools. So school safety and mental health, two things that we haven't really touched on the last couple of meetings, but I want you to know that we are currently writing grants to try and bring more into the district to better support our schools, our communities, if that makes sense. So, questions on either of those?
So
yeah, Cindy?
If we are able to get those grants, is that going to allow to have, for instance, like a counselor at every school? Because currently we don't have that, and I think that is so important.
Yeah, our small schools, Shrewsbury and Tinmouth, don't have full-time counselors. Wallingford and Clarendon do have full-time counselors. So that's definitely something that we feel at our smaller schools. We may not necessarily have a full-time counselor type position at each school. Our counselors are doing lots of wonderful things that might look like meeting with a group of kids for an hour, meeting with one kid for a half hour, going into a classroom and doing a full classroom lesson with, say, the third grade. Rutland Regional and that kind of contracted services would be a smaller scope. So we wouldn't necessarily have somebody who would go into classrooms and run a full class lesson, but they could focus more on individual student supports, so the counselor could be freed up to do more of that. Okay. So I wouldn't say we'd get another counselor, but I'd say it would free up our existing counselors to focus more on that work.
Would they be based in the school, though? So would there be somebody always available for the students? Whatever
contract we end up writing could look different, but I do know that in the past when we have contracted with for those services, that becomes a school-based person. Okay. They're not our employee, but they're in the school. Right. Yeah. Like our tech support has been for a long time. Mm-hmm. Not our employees, but they're in the schools. Yep. And some people might not even know that they're not our employees. Yeah. No, good questions.
Can I just add a little bit to that?
Yep. Absolutely.
I am a school counselor too. We don't have somebody all the time at our small schools, and we don't have somebody all the time at our village schools, because those people are the ones that go up to the mountain schools. And I just want to assure the board that we have a collaborative understanding of the school counselors and the leadership team, that if somebody is in crisis for whatever need, we transfer somebody from one place to the other to make sure that we're never just not in the same way that we would, like, we have a kid with an injury and say, oh, we don't have a school nurse. It's the same thing with school counselors. If somebody's in crisis, somebody else goes from another building to make sure it's handled. Yep. When we're figuring out the equity around having school counselors in different places and how many hours, what we look at is overall student population. And then we look at the numbers of kids who need IEP mandated counseling or have EST or 504 plans that need counseling. And then we think, okay, based on because you might have a school that has 70 kids where 30 need counseling 1 year, and then have a school that has 80 kids where only 10 need counseling, right? So you're going to make sure, just like any other service, that you're serving the population of kids who needs that service. And so we do constantly look at that to make sure that we're serving. This grant, the Stronger Connections grant, we've actually submitted. I don't know if we'll get it. But it allows for potentially a full-time other person in our schools, which then means everyone wins. because if we have another person, let's say that person is at Mill River, it frees up more time still to serve others. And we also wrote into that grant some money to try to bring the sixth graders together more, to transition into the seventh grade. We've been really looking at those transitional years too. I don't know if we'll get it,
But worth trying, and that would actually, it would be a 2-year grant. So that would give us a little room to figure out, are things going well? Is this something we need to keep trying to sustain?
And the school safety grant, we looked specifically at things we kind of have to do anyway, because it had a potential 25% match. Now, we applied for the waiver to not do the 25% match, but we don't want to get $100,000 and not be able to use it because we don't have the 25% match. So we looked at things like, we need to replace some doors, we need to replace some locks, we need cameras, as many of you well know, like those sorts of things that we need to do anyway to look to defray existing costs, not to do fancy extra stuff.
Awesome, thank you. Agenda building.
So our next meeting would be May 31st then. Would have Wallingford scheduled for their...
The
Wait,
17th.
17th.
Oh, I'm jumping past the
I know.
17th. I am so sorry.
It's, you know, having 3 in a month.
Thank you. So May 17th would be Wallingford. We don't have anything else scheduled for the 17th on our board calendar. Actually, we hit a quiet. We will have a lot from personnel potentially. That's going to be a long personnel meeting because we have all our admin evaluation materials. You know, it's been a while since we had a board meeting that we didn't fill up. What are we missing? What are we missing?
Being the fact that we have 5 board members missing tonight,
Yeah.
would it be a good idea to put on there for the next meeting on the 17th to kind of look at the board education strategic planning again?
Yes, thank you.
I mean, not that I really want to be the one guy in the corner, but maybe
Yeah.
we should put board attendance on there as well to discuss.
Yeah.
Only because I know that finance didn't have a quorum. We almost didn't have a quorum for.
At a minimum, it's a worthwhile reminder.
Yeah, I mean, and tonight we
one
barely.
away tonight,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it may not be a bad idea just to
We
have a
need to
discussion
have
on it
a,
again.
we need to have a first reading of, is it C7? C7.
And maybe F28, because there'll be a meeting in between there.
Right, we might
Okay.
have.
Okay. Okay. We'll get those things on there. Maybe it'll be a light meeting. I'll get with Andrea and Matt and our admin team and see if there's anything else we're missing. You may not know that, other board members, but we have a pattern of probably about midweek next week, I'll connect with folks to say, here's the draft agenda, what are we missing? So if you think of things, because it does seem like we're looking at a light meeting, shout to Andrea, and we'll get those on the next one.
Quick question, isn't really on the subject of agenda building, but do we have a graduation date set?
7th.
That is the 7th?
Yep.
And do we have a last day, a student last day set at this point or no?
Student last day, 16th.
The 16th, okay.
Yep. Good questions.
And is it a half day district wide? Because I know
Half
it's
day.
a half day for
Yep.
one of the schools, so I just assumed it was,
Yep.
okay.
Yep, good question. Absolutely.
I should have asked this during buildings and ground, but the boiler room flooding
Yes.
is I don't feel like we've talked about it in a public space.
fair enough,
So
yeah.
I feel like we just need to.
Yeah. We could put that on the agenda.
Yeah.
There's not a ton to report now, except what we shared out to the community. There are nitty-gritty details that people may or may not want to know, but the big push of let's get all these things in line so we can be in school and not have school interrupted. And now we're still working on heating system, which is going to be an ongoing, but we can talk about that. We'll put that on the agenda. See if we have any other updates by then. We could. Good thought.
All right. Do we have an executive session?
None I'm aware of.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Josh, second. All in favor? Unanimous.
Okay, thank
Adjourned
you,
at
everybody.
8:04.